This is episode number 469 of WPwatercooler, Synching WordPress.
Or shinking.
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 I'm Jason Tucker. Go to my not running website of WordPress, jasontucker.blog.
I'm Say Reed. I do stuff. I don't know what it is anymore. What is life? That's Say Reed Media on whatever.
And y'all know who it is. It's your boy Jason Cosper, back at it again on the world's most influential WordPress podcast.
Speaking of podcasts, we got places for you to go find them. Go look around on the internet. You can find us. And while you're on the internet, go hang out with us on our Discord.
Come into the Discord. We don't have cookies, but we're funny.
Yeah.
And it's not a secret anymore. So after the show, you can pop into our Discord and have a little voice chat in the After Cooler channel.
Yeah, that's been fun. We had a good time last time. It was a lot of fun.
I had but it was great.
Yeah, I was going to say
for an hour.
Yeah, you were hanging out until almost like 1 o'clock in there. Not guaranteed that we'll do that again.
No.
But
I actually popped back on because Indigo, my daughter, was off of school, and so I had to go mom. But then everyone was still on, so I popped on and she said hi to everybody. That was really fun. She's like, "Who are these people? What are these little heads?" Anyway, the Discord's fun. You should join us there because I think the Discord is going to help us focus during the show on WordPress stuff that isn't necessarily the inner workings of WordPress contribution, because we get to talk about that in the Discord. So, we don't have to talk about that as much. Although, wait, hold on. We have a new segment. I did want to just offer my thoughts on this is a visual gag for those of you who are listening on a podcast.
The WordPress tea.
I mean, it's just a cup, and that's just a tea bag. So I don't know what you're talking about. It also has glitter on it. Anyway, I just want to say that it has been proclaimed without any context for that transparency and openness is the way that WordPress should be working, and that people didn't know that things were being done in private channels. And that's me drinking the tea, BT dubs. And so, yeah, it just remains to be seen. I think that correlates beautifully to the annual survey discussion we had. So definitely project leadership is super on the same page.
Speaking of
things are going really well, and I'm sure no lawyers were consulted. Okay, anyway, that's the end of that segment.
Yes, speaking of syncing, right? We're going to talk about WordPress syncing.
Yeah, I thought this was the funniest title. I really did. I was like, I love a good double entendre. But this actually was not intended from the title. We're not being shady. This topic came about.
It's actually about WordPress.
It's actually about WordPress.
The collection of PHP files that makes a WordPress thing that has some JavaScripts. Yes, we're actually going to be talking about the software again.
It's the software. So I think Jason Tucker was bored this week and texted us and was like, "What are you guys doing?" What's happening? I'm bored. And I responded with what exactly I was doing, which was, what was I doing? I was building out Airtable to WordPress maps. And so I was explaining the data mapping that I was doing at that particular moment. And we started talking about it. And it's like, oh, as soon as we start talking about something like that, I'm like, nope, we have to stop. This is a show. We have to do the show. Actually, I think, Jason, you did this. You just titled it. You're like, great, new show topic. So anyway, that's what we're talking about today. It's not intended to be a pun. I mean, it is a pun, but it's not intended to be the topic. It's syncing, aligning data from different places. So I just want to clarify. Anyway, so I have lots to say on it because I've been doing it all week. I do it a lot, actually, lately.
So when you do this, do you typically use an outside place as the source of truth, or are you using sometimes WordPress as the source of truth to go to someplace else?
This is such a great question. Where's your source of truth? This is actually why I was making a diagram, because one of my favorite things to do when mapping data and trying to figure all this out is to literally make diagrams. I'm sort of obsessed with making diagrams, like flows, and charts, because then everyone like, look, this is what is happening to your data. It is going here. This is automated. This is not automated. You have to do this part.
Mm-hmm.
There's color coding and shapes. People like that. Clients are like, oh, so the circle means I do it, and the diamond means the computer does it. Exactly. So it's very helpful because honestly, it's a lot to hold in your head, even as someone who understands databases and how data kind of flows around. And so I don't, not only do I not fault my clients for not, grokking the whole thing, but like
Mm-hmm.
I get it because I don't want to hold it in my head either.
A lot of ins, a lot of outs, a lot of what have yous, a lot of strands in old Duder's head.
Yeah, and you really have to understand how your clients work. And to your point, Tucker, where the source of truth is crucial. So, for example, in one client, I actually have multiple sources of. I've not. It cannot be that Airtable, for example, in this case, I also use a million different types of data. Like all my clients have different. Some use Salesforce, some use proprietary systems, some use HubSpot, some use whatever it happens to be. Airtable is very popular currently, and I'm a big fan. But it doesn't scale well. And that's part of the problem. So it scales well for data, like literal data. And then if you partner it with an offsite storage, so you don't reach all your limits, it can actually store like, media data as well. So that can be helpful. But they've really changed their pricing structure so that too much media will cost you. And the key thing there with some of Airtable, I'm not super up on Salesforce's pricing because most of the clients I work with are nonprofits, but and Salesforce gives a free nonprofit, obviously, because it's got that gateway drug. So the scale for pricing, it is per user, and it gets really pricey really quickly, even for just users within an office or within a company. So, for example, I have various artist directories. It is not feasible to have that data managed in Airtable, for example, or to have them have an account, or with Salesforce. So if there is user data like that the user needs to interact with, not the client whose site it is, then the website is still the place to go, because turns out you can make as many users as you want and you don't pay per user, and they can log in, and there are so many great ways, so many great extensions and plugins and ways to manage users, control what they see, give them custom logins, and then you're only sending them to your website. So that's something I run in with a lot, is that if you're doing user data management or user generated content, these offsite accounts aren't necessarily the place you want to have your source of truth. So in some of my clients, we have, the user component is managed or the profiles and all that is managed on the website. And then their other data is managed, like even their posts and pages I'm building out for a client is managed in the Airtable. So it's really interesting because, we've been storing data in our websites, in our data tables, in our MySQL tables. Our post meta is loaded. So it's interesting to be taking the data out of that context. I've always said, when I used to teach intro WordPress classes for small businesses, I would explain WordPress as a fancy data inputter.
I remember those talks.
Yeah, and that is what Airtable is now also, right? So it's really interesting that all of these Airtable's not that new, but it really has all of these database SaaSes, all these SaaSy databases have really been adding features, and they're all still proprietary, but you can get your data in and out. So with APIs and just automations and all the stuff. So, and everyone's doing exports and imports. So the kind of the claim to fame, or the use of I have used WordPress databases and WordPress websites as repositories for business data for many a year.
Sure.
And that, because that was the best choice. That was what was out there, Otherwise,
I know this is probably depending on like the project, but like, how do you determine if you're going to do a per transaction? And I'm using transaction not in the money sense, but yeah, in the sense of a change occurred and now you're going to push or pull that change, versus a like a full export, full import, replacing all the data, one way or the other. What's like, how do you determine which one you're going to end up doing when you start planning this out?
Well, I usually end up doing both because the initial load is the one time like everything goes in. And then, but for the ongoing stuff, it's all trigger based. So it's all like if someone comes in and updates, this. So for example, I'm updating a website that is for public art. And when these different projects go through different stages, right? Like first they're in planning, and then they're in the call to artist phase, and then they're in whatever's after that. And there's different content for each of those things. But the really key thing here is that it is very useful for my client in this particular, actually many of my clients, but this particular client I'm talking about, to save those various iterations. Because again, if you work with nonprofits, a lot of that is grant-based and you have to provide reporting. So that data becomes valuable. And I think, with small businesses, and I don't know, I would also probably say for larger corporations, but keeping marketing content or keeping page content around, not posts, which are going to stay there, right? But the page content you use per season, or it's Christmas now. Do you have to rewrite all of your holiday content, or can you just go back to your database and be like, oh, now I'm going to load this stuff on? And, interestingly, patterns could also be sort of a space to save that data, right? You could be like, here's my holiday Black Friday pattern that I'm going to stick on there, and then just pull it out after the holiday, and then put in your Christmas one, and then put in your New Year's one or whatever, and then pull it out. So you could save the data that way. I am not a fan of the way the data looks anymore, because it's so hard to export cleanly. I mean, you can with like WP all import or export, but I have really been moving away from storing that sort of legacy. It's not really legacy. It's like reusable content. So it makes have it be part of patterns, but I don't know, with the naming change from reusable blocks to patterns, the connotation of it being very design based instead of content based.
Yeah.
It really shifts that. And I don't know if that's a great way to use patterns to like kind of store that content. So anyway, various clients can have different phases of content, push and pull, and then they have a record of what they've done. So you could put it into the website and then have that pull into your database, and then store it that way. Or you can put it in your database and then push it to the website and have it overwrite, various things based on various criteria. So it's the most important part of this is the mapping, like understanding the flow. If you're just automating things and moving around data, like, first of all, you can get very tangled very quickly. I'm actually really interested, before I go keep just talking, I'm really interested Cosper, from a performance standpoint, about data, like text data, especially in a MySQL database is minimal, right? It's not going to really impact anything. But if you're not loading stuff onto a page, let's say it's just stored on the site, some hosts aren't big fans of you storing images and content on the site. So can you, like, I know I get a lot of angry emails from WP Engine about a certain point. has too much data, and I'm like, I'm gonna get them on AWS at some point. Cool your jets. But I know that that's a problem from a server standpoint. So I don't.
Sure.
Yeah. How does that factor in your mind?
I mean, so it's interesting that you brought this up, because I was about to I was about to ask you, so like once you import this data from the source of truth in, is it just going into like posts and post meta? Is it going into its own custom table, which may be a little bit more forgiving? Like how?
I mean, in my case, with all love and apologies to Scott Kingsley Clark, it's going into ACF.
Okay, yeah.
And that's actually really interesting, because when I told this to Tucker, he goes, "Oh, so it's from Airtable to ACF." And I was like, "Airtable to ACF? No, it goes from Airtable to the website, to the WordPress." Like, I didn't think of like ACF as like the receiver,
the destination.
Yeah, I thought of the website as it, because ACF to me, Advanced Custom Fields, is just, it is. I don't build websites without them. So like,
yeah, I mean, ACF is the front end for the custom field editor,
right?
better custom fields. Yeah.
Is that still stored? I haven't been tracking where it's stored lately. I know everyone's been moving stuff around. Is ACF data still stored in Postmeta? Hanging out?
I think so.
Yeah, probably just serialized post meta.
Right.
Yeah.
So in that case, from a performance perspective, it is it's not so okay. I don't love.
You don't have to be nice. You can tell me I'm doing
no.
it wrong. That's all right.
No, you're not doing it wrong. The thing that I would suggest in this scenario, once you start to scale out to like, I have no idea how, and we don't need to get into like revealing client stuff, but once you scale out to a particular point where you have your hosts like WP Engine like coming back at you saying like, hey, maybe you either need to find another home or pay us more money for more resources. At that point, this isn't like a true like fix it patch, but something that'll get you to where you need to go, like and maybe help you along the way until you can get that client on AWS or on something a little bit better. Is
we're going to talk about that next. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, but we so what I would do in that scenario, if stuff is just going into posts and post meta and etc., is there are methods, and there's this real mouthful of a plugin. It's like index WP MySQL something.
I think you recommended me that one before.
I'm so
scared to push any of those buttons. I actually have a site where after we had this conversation, I loaded a bunch of. It's actually on a site, not the same client I was talking about, but a different site that I was moving a bunch of data and using their old database, but which was a disaster. And I really need, like, I was like, I know there is bad stuff in this database. Like, I can see it, right? But I'm not going to go through it manually. So I loaded this plugins in. I still haven't pushed the buttons because I'm scared.
You don't need to be scared. What index WP MySQL for speed does is it has a number of common indexes that basically make lookups for particular types of data faster.
Right.
So
an index of an index.
Yeah,
index.
It's an index for and I mean it covers a lot more than just your post meta table, but in this scenario that's like really the one that you'd want to like focus on. But it will go and create indexes that basically say like, okay, here is where everything that matches, and especially if you're importing content like piecemeal, like along the way, like, oh, something got updated. So now you have a record for something that's right near the top of your post meta table, and then you've added this new record down at the bottom, instead of making your database search through all of the records to see what ones match, it goes, oh, okay, return everything with post ID 356. And it says, oh, okay, I know where all the 356 stuff is because I already have an index for that. And then it just returns the data, and it returns it so much quicker.
So that's performance on the, I guess, on the user side, right? That's where it's coming. Like, how does that, so I don't, let me, on the back end, let's talk about the back end. So one, there's the idea, like when I do have, for this client that is having overages on WP Engine that shall remain unnamed, they keep saying, oh, this is going to affect your performance. And I'm like, well, if I'm not calling those files or whatever, it's because artists upload, insane files. Even with like, I have a 5 megabyte limit, but they're all 5 megabytes, right? And so I don't actually pull those images for the front end. The front end never sees those, right? But they're on the server. And so the see, now we're talking about like performance again. It always comes down to performance.
At some point we'll talk about the syncing part.
But it's on the server, right? If you're storing it on the server, this giant image instead of like just the thumbnail, but you're not calling it, what does that affect? Which performance index does that touch?
I mean, it mainly,
I mean, if they don't want to store it.
Basically, and in the case of WP Engine, I don't know how much they still push this or whatever, but they do have something that they, at least when I was working there, and at this point that was like 7 or 8 years ago, this thing called large FS, where they will take large files.
They still have it.
Yeah,
but
and
they also bought WP Media Pro, I believe it's called, that does very similar things.
Right.
And I was actually I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was expressing my confusion to them actually at WordCamp US this year. They're like, well, we don't know what you're talking about, because it's the people at the booth. And I was like, well, can you just tell your developers to work on this program, please? Because I need help.
Large FS is interesting because while I do like the plugin and think it's great, I think that the large FS solution, as long as they still like actively support it, is a more interesting thing because it works at the server level instead of worrying about WordPress and the PHP of it all. Basically, like the rewriting, everything happens, the uploading, everything in the background happens at the server level, and is like shoving those resources off to the S3 bucket you've basically given them.
The problem with that, the reason that particular client on WP Engine, because I know about that plugin, is it doesn't work with gravity forms. This was actually what I was upset with them about. And speaking of syncing your data, or getting data in and getting data out, when I originally built this for my client, which was like, again, like 6 or 7 years ago now. Oh my gosh, that's why I'm rebuilding it. It was all through gravity forms. And so I'm like taking in all this data, and then it's like completely not useful for that particular instance. And then right when I had found WP Media Pro, which I believe it was called, they bought it. And then I was like, wait, what's happening? Wait, should I buy it? Or should I just, is it included? Is it free? Is it part of my package now? Like, is it this other plugin? I don't know. But this is exactly why, though, it's really interesting, because when you put something into an external database, and Airtable has issues with people storing things and then retrieving them. So a lot of stuff that was happening was people were using Airtable sort of as a CMS, right? They were pulling things from, linking to images that were in Airtable from their websites, putting them in newsletters, really using Airtables as a repository. And they put the kibosh on that real quick. Well, maybe not real quick, but recently. Actually last year, I think. And recent times, last year, same. So anyway, they have taken that away. And so it really lends itself to integration with like an S3 bucket, which leads me to my other question, which is that is there an alternative to AWS? Is
Oh,
it
yeah.
all Amazon?
Oh yeah,
Web
lots of
Services?
them, and they
Lots of
all
them? Okay.
typically
We need to do
use
a,
AWS's way of storing stuff in the way of querying for those buckets.
we should do a dev branch episode on offsite storage, because I need
I will just for the audience watching, and so we don't leave them hanging. You can look at Wasabi, which isn't as dependable but
Wait, the
is
whole
very
point is to
cheap.
leave them hanging. This is so they come back. That was supposed to be a promo for dev branch.
No.
That was the freebie.
Why don't you just tell
yeah.
them in the Discord? Give them all the information.
Okay. And I will just one more. I will give a shout out to DigitalOcean Spaces. That's what I use for the Mastodon server that I run on Simian.rodeo. That really, I mean, it handles all of our storage needs, and I think as long as you keep it under 250 gigabytes, it's $5 a month. Like,
Dang.
come
Nice.
on.
I like that it's a set price. A lot of my clients are like, so how much is AWS going to cost? I'm like, probably less than $10 a month, or like a couple pennies, depends. And they're like, that's not a number. I'm like, I know, I'm sorry.
I got DigitalOcean Spaces up to about a terabyte of storage, and I think it was costing me like $47 a month. So
I don't even understand what a terabyte is. Like, how many, portraits of an artist is that? I cannot
Right.
search. It's like trying to understand the difference between like $1 million and $1 billion, and then you go to $1 trillion, and I'm like, I don't know what you're saying anymore.
It's a very big difference.
The scale has exceeded my capability of imagination. So
this conversation is
great.
This conversation is going very much like whenever I tell Sarah that I upgraded our storage at the house, and I'm like, hey, so on our NAS we have 14 terabytes of storage. Like, please start like backing up your new computer to the thing. And she goes, I don't even know what a terabyte is. Like, I
don't even know how many gallons of gas go in my car.
Terabyte
Okay.
to me sounds like like an Earth. It's an Earth.
Right.
It's like, I don't know. Like, what is it? Is I literally, if there wasn't a little number on the dashboards of my hosting service,
yeah,
I'm like, I don't know. It says the number. What's that? It's probably, I do that on my phone too. You go look at like the storage and like the fun little graph.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, that's what it says. Like, there's so much trust involved in just like,
but
I don't know.
WordPress has to make 5 copies of that file though for all the different sizes that it needs. So it's okay. Everything will be just fine.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why I'm asking, right, about originally, because you put these huge files on there, but I'm only using on the front end, the thumbnails that I'm calling. I'm not calling the whole thing because that would be bonkers. So, do I really care if I'm putting stuff on the server? WP Engine keeps telling me that I should care. You're going to have bad performance problems. And I'm like, am I though? You don't think I am?
WP Engine cares because they are using a cloud service provider that charges them through the nose for all the storage that their customers are using.
So I'm costing them money by using it as a storage repo. Got it.
So any of these
for my conversion then.
Yeah, any of these managed WordPress hosts that just are like, oh, we run our stuff on AWS or Google Cloud or whatever, they're paying. I mean, they're probably getting a little bit of a reduced rate than like if you or I were to go to Google Cloud and go, hey, like I want, yeah, exactly. So they're making it up in bulk or whatever by bringing that many customers, but they're still paying more than if they had their own infrastructure, they own their own hard drives, everything else. So it is in their interest for you to keep your files as like compressed and everything as possible. And in the case of working with artists, that's just not always gonna
yeah.
It doesn't matter how many plugins I install, somehow they find a way to like upgrade. I'm like, how do you do this? So I've been thinking about this. So I think what I've been building out for various clients is actually, so there's headless WordPress. This is bodiless WordPress. It's like the opposite, right? Because headless WordPress is you're using the back end for data management, and then it goes out to something that's not WordPress, right? Some other format.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing instead is I'm pulling stuff so the head, it's just a head. So this is like the suspended head of WordPress, which I don't know, maybe that's not the right way to go about it, because everyone's like, take the head off and it's better. So now I'm just literally like bodiless WordPress. Maybe I should get that URL because that's really funny to me.
Are you familiar? I'm pretty sure you will be, but with the concept of an exquisite corpse,
Oh yeah, like the poem.
or like a drawing where you fold a sheet
Yeah.
in thirds, and then someone draws the head part, the body part, and the legs.
Yes.
Yes.
Instead of headless WordPress, you are building an exquisite corpse where
Exquisite corpse. Wait, WPexquisitecorpse.com right now. Please, someone buy it for me. It's almost the holidays.
So are you saying that like the legs of this corpse or the whatever of this corpse is actually being hosted through
Wait, I know the legs
through AWS or through
the legs are the
an S3
the
bucket?
Airtable, and then the body is the AWS or the DigitalOcean, and then the head is WordPress on the managed hosting server.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there are a couple people in our Discord who are twitching right now at the thought of
Oh man.
I feel like you are doing this backwards.
No, okay, so say we've laid out that you're doing Airtable and pulling stuff into WordPress that way. What are you using to actually pull stuff and
we didn't even
sync?
get to that part of this thing. I'm using multiple things for different clients, because why use one thing when you can use all of them? In some cases, I'm using Zapier, right? Good old Zapier. In another case, I'm using WP AirSync, which is has been a very they were like a very like startup-y plugin, and they've like been adding features like wild. So they're like refining their pricing and adding pro version. It's like it's sort of like these automations are like the Wild West, because these plugins are like popping up, and then you watch them develop because they launch with like the the MVP of their stuff. So you kind of have to pick a horse and like go with it. You're like, I hope this one works. And please don't mess this up, because I'm counting on you. So WP AirSync, which links Airtable to WordPress with using I'm assuming the APIs. This is the other thing. Like, and I wanted to talk about this, but I could just write my own API scripts, right? But the API is so problematic and ever changing that I'm like, I really want the plugins to they can monitor that and keep their plugin up to date with that. And I don't have to do that. Another one that I'm using and has also just been throwing features in there constantly and upgrading their systems is WP webhooks. So they are, in addition to having they have a bunch of integrations. So you can do it through like If This Then That or Zapier or any of the automators or the third-party automators, but you can also do it directly by hooking up, direct triggers and webhooks. So it can receive all of that data directly, or you can go through the third party. Like, you can literally make a daisy chain of data. And in some cases, because sometimes it's going, some of the data, like I'm taking it from a place called Submittable, which is a grant application kind of place, right? So data's coming into there. And I actually split it off. Some of it goes to Air Force, and then some of it comes to the website. So it's really like, this is why I do so much mapping. It really is like this daisy chain of stuff. Like, you've got all these like extension cords plugged into each other, and things can go wrong. Like, obviously, Zaps can stop working, or the plugin gets updated.
It sounds like you could build a race condition as well, where you are essentially sending and receiving at the same time, and it just becomes an infinite loop.
Oh God, it hasn't happened yet, but thank you. I'm glad that you pointed that out.
Well, now you know the term race condition.
Excellent. exciting waiting for that to happen. But this is why it's been really interesting too, because this is, I guess it's not, it doesn't feel that new to me, but I think it's just like everyone's like it's finally getting into the more commercial, like, where the solutions are proliferating out there.
Right.
And so it feels like, I don't know, just like kind of early days in the web where you're watching it happen instead of just like these plugins that are like, or the early days of WordPress anyway, instead of these plugins that are like just, all built out in these huge behemoths and have like, 12,000 extensions over here. So that part's kind of fun because it feels like you're in a more scrappy part of the development world. And, you can make a lot of, you can choose the wrong choices. And then, you can build out an entire Zap flow that then breaks in one particular spot because something, gets disconnected, or Zapier updates all of its calls, which it has happened also. So
Yep.
the more plugs that you get together, the more, what are those called?
Where did it break in this chain of,
yeah.
To make it holiday appropriate, the Christmas classic, A Christmas Story, when Ralphie's dad is getting ready to light up the Christmas tree, the collection of plugs, extension cords, cables on cables on cables, and then what happens? He blows a fuse.
Right.
Yeah, well, that has happened. Luckily, it's not as dramatic. Things just go. Right. Someone gets an error message, and then someone does or does not tell me necessarily. So,
well, that fuse is the web host in this instance, because if you have if you have a IFTTT with a Zapier with an Automate with a blah blah blah, and they're all talking to the same endpoint.
Well, they're all different endpoints actually. So, like WP webhooks. This is one of the updates that they did. They used to have one like kind of webhook per function sort of, and now you create a unique one for every single thing. So you're like, woo, let me just add some numbers and letters here. But like it is, I mean, I'm not saying it's the best way, right? Like, because I don't know I know Airtable is going to be around. I know Salesforce is going to be around. I don't like using Salesforce for a multitude of reasons, mostly philosophical. But Airtable is, there's actually conversations that I've been having about, are we going to use the Airtable, because they have interfaces now, are we going to use the Airtable interface to display this data? Or are we going to use the website? So that's a whole nother use case, right? Because there are some use cases, in this case, elected officials or, certain partners that you can then give the Airtable interface to. You're completely bypassing the website. So, what is data and what is a website? Like a website, like this is getting really, as like, I've always said in all of my talks that websites are content. That is what they are, because without content, there's no website. There's just nothing, right? You can have anything coded, but unless there's something in there to show, there's literally nothing. So if the content's just about how it's being displayed, then you start getting into the static site stuff. And is that a website? Is the website something you can log into that you are managing and storing? Like this is almost really kind of the separation of website and CMS to a degree that it hasn't been separated before, right? Like because now I'm using Airtable in some of these cases, and Salesforce reluctantly, as content management systems, but then connecting to another content management system, which is just really a framework for the website.
Well, what I will tell you that's good about the way that you're going about this is because of the fact that you're syncing it, it fails gracefully.
It does fail very gracefully.
Because if you were,
I am a graceful fail.
If you were embedding this, pulling it directly like an embedded thing, it would not fail gracefully. It would fail with a JavaScript error that says I can't pull from this place, but at least you have a copy of it that's stored on the local server that you've done. Whichever
server sync. That is,
so that's much better.
It's not bad. It's really interesting, and I think that it does point to this sort of, like I said, philosophical question about what is a website. Is it just something you access through a URL? Because that can be apps too, right now these days. So
Yeah.
it's just such interesting times we're living in. And this actually goes to the what is WordPress conversation as well, right? Because if what is WordPress is defined as a CMS, then we're competing with Airtable or we're competing with Salesforce. But it's not really the best CMS anymore. Like the best place to like, maybe it's a good place to manage your content, but store your content, maybe not, right? So,
Right.
but are you really storing it in your WordPress? I guess you are if it's in your database tables. That's in the WordPress, right? Not just on the server.
But just think if Airtable supported blocks, then you could build all that stuff in Airtable and hit sync, and then all of those comments get copied over to the website as a post.
No, I
And
mean that
then
you have these interfaces that essentially are websites, like,
so
and
you
they
can use
are
Drupal as
auto
your front
updated
end.
data. You can have a little dashboard essentially that you can share.
Yeah.
You can share publicly. They don't have pretty addresses, they don't have.
Right.
So again, that comes down to like, Google took all the
marketing thing.
domains off of all the local, like the specific URLs out of the browser. So like, does that even matter if the URL is pretty anymore? If it has a redirect, you can click a pretty URL that then redirects to whatever, Airtable interface it is. Like, does that matter? I don't know. I think it's so interesting. Like, I wish we would have more. Well, we have these conversations, but I wish we would have more of these conversations, like across the industry or even across WordPress, because I feel like we're so myopic and we're just like, oh, this is the way we've done things, and this is what we're building, and this is what we're focusing on, and it's like a 5-year-old plan that we're like endlessly moving toward, and it's like, excuse me, things are changing and solutions are changing, and we should be more nimble than we are. And
right.
we should be able to adapt to all of these different ways of managing data in order to stay on top of it, really, in order to stay, like, if we were working on being a better front end, then everyone in the Discord wouldn't be rolling their eyes when I say I'm using a only head WordPress or something, so like it's interesting. I think it sucks that people and a lot of developers would say that, like, that taking the data and stuffing it into these WordPress tables is, not the right way to go about it, and it should use a static site generator and blah, blah, blah. Like, WordPress should be able to take that space. You know what I mean? That should be a way, it should be able to do that easily. And maybe it can as we get more lightweight with some of the new themes but I don't know. With the way the posts look, I don't know if we can we? I don't know. They're so ugly, that data. I don't know. It doesn't matter, but I care.
I was doing some digging around because I was like, there's got to be some way to do ACF, like, not into like, from what I've seen, like, in their documentation, they'll put stuff in term meta, they'll put it in post meta. It all depends, but there is it looks like it's like $149 a year, but that will dump your ACF data into custom database tables.
Oh, wow. So like makes its own little database tables for it.
Right.
Interesting.
So
then I will be going from Airtable to the plugin, the connector plugin, to ACF, to custom tables. We're just going to add another little plugin to my daisy chain here.
Right.
Yeah, you have to build something that queries those database tables directly, that circumvents ACF entirely, and then displays it on some app or something.
Yeah, I was like, now how do you display that data on the front end? I'm interested. Is it just the same ACF data in a different table? And does that...
Yeah.
That's so interesting. There's so many ways to build things, y'all.
I know. It's funny because, like, the way I was envisioning this topic was very, like, software focused. And the thing is that I think we would be doing a disservice by having it be a software focus. Like, here's all the plugins you should go download. No. It's your job to, like, go test this stuff out. So give you a couple of them to play with. but really like none of these things work for everything. And
I think that's the job security. You know, everyone's so worried about like, oh, it's all going to take up. No, because this stuff requires understanding. It requires understanding of the software, requires understanding of the processes. It requires understanding of automations and data. And that is where the specialized knowledge comes in. If you're not just building a website, there is no just building a website anymore. Like that doesn't exist. Like, so
this is
stop
why
thinking about it that way.
this is why, and it might surprise you to learn that for like 10 plus years now, there's been that discussion about like, is somebody who just implements stuff in WordPress a developer?
Do they matter? Like, are they valid?
Right. But I mean, okay, they may not have like hands-on code. They're like low or no code solution people. Can they call themselves a developer? And like developer, maybe a stretch. However, I do think that they are a very important part of the ecosystem because they have to tie all of this shit together. They have to,
and sometimes it is shit, by the way. Just
yes,
because sometimes developers are like, I'm just going to shove stuff in the post meta table, and then you're like, thanks. Now I have to figure out how to extract it and use it. Well, like practitioner. By the way, I do like to point out that I do also code, and it's not just CSS.
Of course.
Yeah, but you don't want to build the whole. You said this earlier. You don't want to build the entire product that you are going to be the only customer of, and you're definitely not trying to go and build a thing to make it be a whole new business because you already have a business that you're doing other stuff with.
No, I do not want to support software.
Yeah, let this be somebody else's thing.
That's the interesting thing about WordPress and developer, right? You can be a developer, but use all these tools because you can't support all of it, and supporting the constant updating of all the tools is, you know, it's not just about clicking an update or enabling auto updates, right? It's really about the data and the processes. Like it might work for a couple upgrades, and then you're like, oh, look, someone updated something, fundamental, and now I have to go rewire everything. I almost feel like an electrician sometimes, or like one of those old school like operators where they're like, hello, and you like plug in all the different cords and you're like, I'm going to connect this to this and this to this.
Yeah. If I had a business, I would definitely be calling it a practice. I don't think I would call it an agency. I would steal from the medical industry and call it a practice. And then you can just kind of get away with it.
I do a lot of counseling. So that actually kind of works.
Right.
I would say
practitioner. I love that.
I would say to go even simpler than what Tom suggested is just say that we're all WordPress workers. Maybe that's a little socialist or communist of me.
Oh, wow.
Is like, yeah, but like, hey, yeah, we're all workers. We all do work with WordPress.
So there's like a WP, and then there's like a sickle.
Okay.
And then a hammer on the other side.
I'm gonna see if I can get the internationalized domain name.
Please do. Can we be like the ICWP or something like that?
Right.
That would be awesome.
So with us kind of the clock running out here, we wanted to invite you folks over to our Discord and come hang out with us on our after cooler.
And tell me how I'm doing it wrong. Or
how do you get to it? You can go to WPwatercooler.com/aftercooler, and you'll be able to find us over there, and then come and hang out with us in our audio chat in Discord.
Although
if
my
you do it on your phone, you can actually drive to your destination with it playing, and you don't have to look at the phone or anything. You just talk. I did it for an hour, and it worked out great. So if you need to get someplace right after the show, that's the way to do it.
Company while he drives around.
Exactly. Like, if you want to go to Home Depot with me, that's where I'm going next. So
take your listeners to Home Depot Day.
Yep. That's it.
All right. We love you all. Thanks for being here and listening to us jabber.
We do love you all. Talk to you all later. Here's our outro. Go over to our website at WPwatercooler.com/subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. If you like this content, leave us a comment. We'd love that. And find us over in our Discord. That's where we're hanging out right after this. Talk to y'all later. You have a good one. Bye-bye.